Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 2nd of April. And well, no surprise, right off that EBM gold right there, and we continue to go. Wasn't too much surprise. We just started with our yellow from the shakeout, which indicates that we're getting into a longer trend mode for the market. And we already had the green move above cyan, and now cyan below red, and just punctuated things. Early start for them at the beginning of the month, even before fund money comes in, so might see a little bit of a lull when we get to the 5th in that, because some fund managers may want to wait to see if they can get some kind of a pullback. If this continues, then they'll be forced to catch up. And this becomes a secondary factor to why we see pops that then fall off, because they're chasing return and they see themselves getting further and further behind as the year goes, particularly since there was so much negative bias that things were just falling off a cliff, blah, 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 blah. And this is why you can never, ever rely on the news for market direction. You will get pummeled every single time, guaranteed. Interesting that the S&P outperforming, but it's a little misleading because the NASDAQ had already broken into highs that weren't matched by the S&P. So this is just a sort of a catch-up and equilibrium move, but we've already seen that the NASDAQ was well ahead of the S&P anyway, and had already been in a buy from earlier when we got down to these, the 76% support, and held up beautifully. So no shock to see the turnaround and the shakeout. The interesting part is, if we start to make these new highs, we're going to be looking at this shakeout histogram as well as this one. The previous peak, 1273 and 1299 was the peak right there. So in order for this to be congruent, it's going to have to continue that press. So I'm not expecting a divergence at all, just given what we're seeing, because things are still on par. The full retrace that we were expecting for the euro is still working its way through, slowly but surely. A little bit at a time. Still a disaster with the Brit exit, blah, 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 blah. Same old story, different day, but no surprise with any of that. And that's caused a bit of an implosion with gold from this move, and that doesn't really shock us from what we saw from the slow rollover breakdown as we reached new peaks. In fact, it was a bit divergent from the original short move right there, because we kind of got that pop break right here when we started to see the steel moving back above cyan, but then it crossed back below it pretty quickly. It wasn't an exact spider. I mean, we like to see it where it spikes up and then they cross, but that rejection right there of cyan and green really pretty much told the story. And that was pretty close to the 124 right there on the ETF to the 124.18 close of the, we just had the slight divergence. So it happens, not a problem. It's not a whole lot to say about the day. This is the DLCon Pink 2, the revised, more trend-following setup, and you can see that where it did produce significant weakness, really wouldn't qualify for what we tend to look at, which would be where that steel comes back above right here and then breaks back down below. This would be closer to identifying the weakest point of that setup, but still not enough to really create a problem. And then we just kind of eased across, and then the DOC red staying well above the previous dip low pivots, and not even breaking on its weakest below these lows. So which is not surprising that it never broke below. We just kept touching the 50 and following it. So as the range narrows, though, we would expect an expansion phase to take place out of this. But when you get a breakout to the highs like that, like I've said many, many times, even if you get a little bit of a retrace, you typically end at the highs or higher. And if there's enough short interest to really propel it, sometimes you can get a significant break higher. We're now at that 2870 previous algo level. which is where we stalled out at. So from the 30s before, we had another one at this 39 range where we broke out, and it cleared the 45, and then boom, the next one was all the way up here at 70, and that's where we're at. So clean stuff. And you can see from that original buy down here at the 50% for the power mo adjustments, still following it along, setting up various additional adjustments. What was that original entry? 2813. So not bad. Yeah, all over 50 points. So good stuff. Still having some Skype things. I think they've talked to them and they've given me a thing to do, so hoping that works. It's a little different on the dedicated server that I use because it doesn't reset like regular computers do, so I had to change a few roles and things that they do on Windows servers, whatever. So following those procedures. So hopefully that will get me back up and running on Skype nice and easy without the difficulties of it, because I'll just try to post stuff and it just doesn't react. So anyway, I will update you as necessary, and everyone have a continued great run with this. Great way to start the month, piece of cake with that. As always, trade well. We'll talk again later.